Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's video is partially inspired by requests from people that have watched some of the videos that I've talked about cheating and my thoughts and my take on why I think that is such. It isn't just that I'm labeling it so much as a bad idea, which I think is kind of a common sense approach to that and really common knowledge to anybody that's not an idiot. Uh, but that the fact that cheating in and of itself is really more or less a cowardly act of manipulation and con artistry against the person that you're doing it to, simply because you don't want to take the chance of being out there on your own, and the ability to identify, self-reflect, and rise above that so that we do not become people that engage in that sort of behavior and attempt to justify it, because our honesty and our integrity and our word to people matters just as much as it's probably one of the most important things out there. It really defines who we are and defines our character. Now, when it comes to cheating and deception, I've had people ask me about a test that I did to an ex of mine when I was married years ago. Went through a divorce, went through the whole court system, suffered through alimony fraud and all of the crap that happened with that. And thankfully, I can pass that information on to you guys and help you avoid the insanity and the injustices of our court system that just don't work well with this. But the main test that I could say that I actually did, one of the major ones, was a simple test where I knew the answer to it. It involved her and another person that I think she was involved with or interested in, and it was just a direct question that I already had the answer to. And I wanted to give her the chance to be honest, come clean, and tell me the truth, and she decided not to. So I've realized at that point, by asking a question I already had the answer to determine what type of character in my ex I was dealing with. And then I got the answer, not one I was hoping for, but one that I eventually had to act on down the road when I filed for divorce. But when it comes to signs of cheating and deception, especially in a relationship, but these are things that could be even applied to other things other than a romantic relationship or somebody that you're dating or married to, God forbid. Uh, One of the major ones I would say is when you're directly speaking to them and asking them questions about things when it comes to their interactions with other people, uh, just having a direct conversation that you should be able to have. You should be able to have direct, point blank, honest conversation like an adult. Because I mean, there's nothing more attractive and more incredible than somebody who just can be brutally, bluntly honest and straightforward and can state their purpose, state what they want and what they're after. And you should be able to have that type of relationship with the person you're in married to or dating or whatever. You should be able to have that, or else there's severe limitations and really severe questions, serious questions as to why you're involved with them and whether or not you should be involved with them. So eye contact is a major, major thing. Now, anybody that knows anything about deception or dealing with people that might not be very honest with you will tell you flat out, somebody who is unable to look you right in the eye when giving a direct answer. Like, they should be able to look you straight in the eye and say exactly what they're thinking, exactly what they mean, and they're not stumbling over their words. And you can read a lot from that. Now, is it absolutely foolproof? Sometimes people aren't very easily able to do that, but more often than not, it is generally a sign of deception, especially if it's about a serious topic. Like, you're trying to find out if they've been, you want to ask them point blank, have you been interacting with a person that you used to date years ago or somebody that you used to be connected with? And if you're able to point blank ask them, they're not able to look right at you and just give you a convincing and honest answer. A lot of the times their eyes will be darting around, looking down to the floor, across the room. They kind of have this sort of physicality where they're seeming like they're shrinking back a little bit, like they're, not in a defensive way, but in a sort of shifty kind of way where you can kind of get a sense of that. And you have to be careful with this one because it can be misleading and it can be misread to some degree. But more often than not, it is an indicator of some level of deception where you're either not getting the truth at all, or maybe they're only giving you a partial truth. These are things that you might have to delve into further, and you got to be direct and to the point. I mean, you might never get the complete honest truth out of them. In fact, more often than not, you probably won't these days. But this is something that you have to ask about. And if it's enough of a red flag to where you feel like there's a lot of shiftiness and a lot of these other signs that I'm mentioning in this video to kind of go along with it, then you should really seriously reconsider whether you should even be in that relationship. Another major sign is if they're always hiding their phone, like putting it face down so that when messages, texts, phone calls, other stuff pop up, you can't see what's happening, and only they will go and kind of look into it later on when they're away from you. And it's kind of a it's kind of an indicator of that. And another major thing that connects with that too is if they're always sneaking off or being on their phone, kind of tucked away with the screen pulled away from you. Now, one could argue, and this does make sense, they might have a business. Like I myself, I run multiple different businesses where I have to actually be in contact with people, with clients and other stuff like that. But that's short and brief and to the point. You can recognize the difference if you're really just paying attention. It's short and brief and to the point. I'm not having an extensive conversation. Those people aren't contacting me going, "How's your morning going?" They're not playing the "Hi, how are you" game with me. And on rare occasions, I've had people that have attempted, women that have attempted to do that, and I know exactly what's going on. They're trying to, test the waters and see if there's anything open there. And it, best way to handle it is simply not respond. If they keep trying that, you just eventually close that down. If you're not interested in doing that sort of thing or trying to cross that line with them, simply not responding at all, best way to handle it. But that is a completely different animal than somebody who is, say, tucked away over on their phone on the couch, and the two of you are sitting there watching a movie, and they're spending most of their time conversing with some person that they don't really want you to know who it is, and they're not even spending the time with you. You definitely don't want that. And that is certainly a sign of something that you need to be talking to this person about, directly addressing, finding out what's going on, and deciding whether or not this is something you want to pursue in the future, whether this relationship should keep going at all. Another major thing that I would say is conversations being deleted. Now, as much as stuff as I have coming in, usually on my phone, I never ever have anything that I ever really have to delete. Like nothing that I'd have to kind of get rid of or shuffle away, because I wouldn't care if somebody looked at my phone. And there's a statement, it's really simply this way: the innocent have nothing to fear. And transparency and openness and honesty are major cornerstones to any relationship, especially this day and age where electronics, social media, there's so many avenues where you can cross the line and get involved with somebody where you shouldn't be. So transparency and openness and honesty are just they're cornerstones of any relationship, and you need to have that stable in your life. You just really need to have that set with the person that you're involved in a relationship with. And if they are deleting conversations, that is a level of admittance simply by the action that you got to be seriously concerned about that, especially when it's something that's on an app like, social media. That's not taking up space on your phone. They're doing that because they're attempting to cover their tracks 9 times out of 10. That's what's going on. This is not to try and make anybody be paranoid or start ascribing suspicious actions to things that might not actually be suspicious, but at the same time, using logic and reason and objectivity to approach this and just come to a sane conclusion. Those are my favorite words, but I think those are great words to live by. So I'll just keep using them, and I don't care if it annoys anybody. So another thing that would be a big, big red flag is if they are lying about their past or history with people, sometimes to some degree from their past, because they should try to be as honest as they possibly can. Honesty is absolutely the best policy. Having no time bombs show up to completely surprise you is the best thing. Because if you're planning a future with somebody and you're in a committed relationship with somebody and you're thinking this is going to last for a long time, they should be more in the know than other people. And if you can't do that, then there is no future. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But one of the bigger things about that is lying about somebody that's still connected into their life. Like they haven't gotten rid of the contact information, blocked and removed them, and they're downplaying usually. There's a form of deception there. They're just downplaying their involvement with this individual, like what their sexual history is, how involved they actually were, how many times they kept going back and hooking up, anything like that. Those are major, major red flags that you got to, a lot of the times I got to say, if you see something like that that isn't really quickly, easily explainable to where it's obvious that maybe there was just a mistake made and not, we're not talking about like something clearly crossing the line. But even if it shows up at all, you have to be really concerned about whether or not that person is somebody that you should even be trusting at all. If there's any deception going on with that, you probably need to run. Certainly do not plan a long-term future with that individual. And then my last point that I want to touch on is missing blocks of time. Basically, times where they might tell you, I'm at home doing this or I'm at home doing that, and you end up finding out they're not at home. They're lying about where they're going. They're lying about their whereabouts. They're telling you that they're working till a certain time, and then there's a missing block of time for 2 or 3 hours where they're kind of just unaccounted for. Now, I realize, and I've had people say to me, well, that's just very, very trying to cast a light of that's manipulative and controlling, that you want to know where they are 24/7. No, I don't want to know where somebody is 24/7, but people don't vanish and turn their phones off for long periods of time. And most of the accounts that I've heard of from other people that have experienced this sort of thing is usually the gaslighting that happens where they're like, "Oh, you don't trust me. You want to be controlling and manipulative." But like I said, there should be transparency and accountability. If somebody is vanishing for a long period of time, there should be no problem with you asking a point blank question. Hey, where were you? What you were doing? What were you doing? And they're not shifting their eyes like I was talking about in the first point, all over the place, looking down at the floor, unable to meet your gaze and give you a direct answer about what in the world they've been up to. Because you should be able to have that type of direct and honest conversation with somebody you're in a relationship with. And if they've got missing blocks of time, both of you should be accountable to each other about what it is that you're doing. Because if neither one of you is screwing around and cheating, I mean, if it's a missing block of time where you're like, well, hey, what'd you end up doing during those 3 hours? And they tell you, oh, I went to the store and I did this and I did this, and everything kind of lines up, that's not a problem. If their immediate reaction to it is a hostile, negative, why do you want to know? That is a huge, huge red flag, because somebody who's in an honest, open state of mind that is genuinely innocent isn't going to have a freak out over an innocent, straightforward question. It simply requires transparency in a relationship. They're just not going to have that extreme and negative reaction if they're being honest with you. And this applies to men and women. Either sex could directly address this to the person that they're with. And if you can't get satisfactory answers that are fairly clear, like if you can't get transparency and they are not showing you that those boundaries are being kept, run. You don't need that. You don't need to talk them into it. You're not their parent. They need to be demonstrating that like a responsible, honest, straightforward adult. And anybody who can't is basically an overgrown child. Not worth wasting your time. So that's just my personal take on it. I want to hear what you guys have to think about this. How many of you have experienced this and called people out on it and ended up finding out exactly what you suspected was actually going on? I'd love to hear about that too. There's a catharsis sometimes in being able to put the story out there and kind of get it off your chest and talk about it a little bit. I believe in bringing the positive just as much as the negative, but before you can get to the positive and get to a good, actionable game plan for the positive in your life, a lot of times you got to identify the negative in the first place. So sometimes you got to have those tough conversations, and that's okay. We can do both here. So as always, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It all helps the algorithm and helps me get a little bit further out there and brings more people here to talk about the truth and embrace a little bit of sanity in this crazy world. So look forward to talking to you all again soon. Have a great day.